I'm Evelyn. I'm 27, and I never imagined waking up to find my brand new car gone overnight. I worked for months, saved every penny, and poured my heart into it, only to discover my parents had given my keys to my sister. The betrayal hit me like a lightning bolt. Have you ever felt completely blindsided by family? Comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family drama, emotional courage, and real-life revenge. I've always been the responsible one in my family, the one who followed the rules, saved every paycheck, and made careful decisions. So when I finally bought my first brand new car last month, it felt like a dream coming true. I had worked 2 jobs, spent nights researching every feature, and imagined countless drives along the winding roads near the river. That's why what happened next shattered me. Overnight, my dream car disappeared. And to make matters worse, when I called my parents for answers, they casually told me they had given my keys to my sister. Before we dive into everything, I need to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And if you love real-life family drama, emotional courage, and revenge-driven stories, make sure to subscribe. I woke up that morning to the warm glow of sunlight spilling through my blinds. My alarm had gone off at 7:15 a.m., but I barely noticed it. Something felt off. There's a certain calm that comes with mornings in our neighborhood, the soft hum of sprinklers, distant barking dogs, the faint smell of freshly cut grass. But when I opened the blinds and looked at the driveway, that calm vanished like smoke. My heart stopped. The place where my cherry red sedan had sat so proudly, shining in the morning light, was completely empty. The driveway was bare. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I was seeing things. Maybe it was a dream. But no. Concrete, empty space, no car. Not even a neighbor's SUV in the usual spot. Just the ordinary asphalt, the morning dew glistening. And in that instant, I felt a cold pit open in my stomach. I threw on my slippers and ran outside. My feet slapped against the cool concrete. The morning air, usually comforting, felt heavy and suffocating. I glanced down the street, hoping it had just been moved a few blocks over. But no, nothing. Silence. Only a neighbor's cat slinking across the lawn. I felt my hands shake as I frantically tried the door handle. Locked. Of course, it was still locked. But the car? Gone. The first thought that struck me was panic. Was it stolen? Had someone broken in overnight? I scanned the area for tire marks, footprints, anything. There was a faint trail in the soft dirt beside the curb, tracks that could have been made by a car. But they didn't look like someone had tried to break in. They seemed deliberate, like the car had been driven away intentionally. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my mom. "Evelyn, don't worry. It's fine. We took care of it." What? Took care of it? I whispered, my voice trembling. I felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with disbelief. I called her immediately. "Mom, where's my car? It's gone." I could barely get the words out, my chest tightening. "Oh, that," she said casually, as if she were talking about a misplaced grocery bag. "We gave the keys to your sister. She needed it for, well, something." My brain froze. I couldn't process it. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to keep from falling. "Wait, you gave her my car? Without asking me?" "Well, we thought it would be fine. She promised to return it soon." My mom replied, her tone light, as if no great crime had been committed. I felt a hot wave of anger rising in me, but it was mingled with disbelief, sadness, and betrayal. My sister, my parents. How could they, after all I'd done to earn that car, to save every penny, stay up late working, plan, research? It didn't matter. It was gone, taken casually. I ran to my bedroom, grabbed my laptop, and started checking social media. Nothing from my sister, Nothing about the car. Just posts of her smiling, her friends, normal teenage stuff. Nothing that hinted she had taken it. I paced back and forth, replaying every possible scenario. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe she borrowed it and something happened. My mind raced. Each thought spiraled into worse possibilities. Accidents, theft, damage. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I left multiple voicemails, each one getting more desperate. At some point, I realized I was shaking uncontrollably. My hands, my legs, my chest. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a car. It was the symbol of all my hard work, my independence, my personal victory. And suddenly, it felt like everyone I trusted had turned against me. I went outside again, searching the street, hoping to see her car coming back, or a neighbor, or anyone who could tell me something. The quiet of the morning was suffocating. Every small sound, the breeze, a distant lawnmower, a bird chirping, made my nerves jump. Then I noticed a small scrap of paper by the curb. It looked like a note, half buried in dew. I picked it up. It was blank. My hands trembled as I realized it might have fallen from the car, or maybe it was just coincidence. But my mind refused to let go of the possibility that it was connected, a small clue in a puzzle I wasn't ready to solve. By mid-morning, I had run through every thought, every possibility, every conversation I could remember with my parents and sister over the past month. My sister had never even hinted she wanted the car. She had been jealous of it, yes, but she never asked. And yet, here we were. My car gone. My parents complicit. I walked around the block, trying to clear my head. The sun was higher now, the warmth brushing my face, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside me. I noticed things I had ignored before. The neighbor's security camera, the way the streetlights flickered at night, the way someone had scuffed the paint on the curb near where the car usually parked. Every detail became significant, a possible clue, a possible explanation. I remembered my dad mentioning something last week about lending her the car for a quick drive. At the time, it had sounded innocent, but now it felt like deception layered over betrayal. How could they not even tell me? How could they assume I'd be okay with this? The more I thought, the angrier I became, but there was also sadness, a deep, gnawing sadness that my family, my safe place, could betray me like this. I sat down on the curb, feeling the rough concrete press against my palms, and I let myself cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that ran down my face as the morning sun continued its climb. After a while, I pulled out my notebook. I started writing everything down, the sequence of events, my emotions, my suspicions. Writing helped me organize my thoughts. I listed every possible reason my parents might have done this, every potential lie, every tiny clue I had noticed. My pen scratched furiously across the paper as I realized this was not just about the car, it was about respect, boundaries, and being acknowledged. I decided I couldn't just sit and wait. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Hensley, a kind woman in her 70s who always had her porch light on for me when I got home late from work. She had a small security camera pointed toward the street. "Mrs. Hensley," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "did you happen to see a red sedan leave last night?" "Oh, Evelyn," she said gently, "I did see someone drive off, but it was too dark to tell who. I can check the footage if you want." Hope flickered. Maybe there was an answer. Maybe there was proof. I felt a tiny spark of control returning as I made plans to watch the footage later that afternoon. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text from my mom. "Don't be upset." She needed it. Really? Everything's fine. 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 I laughed bitterly, feeling the irony sting. Nothing about this was fine. Not my car. Not my trust. Not my family. The betrayal felt enormous, but there was also clarity beginning to form. I couldn't control their decisions, but I could control my reaction. I walked around the empty driveway again, touching the spots where the tires used to rest, imagining the grooves left in the asphalt. Each empty space felt like a hollow punch to the chest. And yet, for the first time, I realized something. This was not just about anger. It was about asserting myself, about being heard, about demanding respect for my effort, my work, my life. The morning stretched on, each minute a combination of fear, disbelief, and slowly building determination. I made a mental checklist, call the neighbor, track down every possible lead, confront my parents, and reach my sister. Step by step, piece by piece, I would uncover the truth. Even as I stood there, the sun warming my back, I realized the driveway wasn't just empty, it was a challenge, a test, and I wouldn't let it define me. My car was gone for now, but my sense of self, my courage, my determination, they were still mine. By noon, I had drafted a plan. I would watch the security footage, trace the car's movements, and confront my family armed with evidence. No more assumptions, no more blind trust. This was my first step toward reclaiming control, toward turning this betrayal into clarity and action. And so, standing on the driveway, heart still racing but mind slowly sharpening, I made a silent promise. This car wasn't just a vehicle. It was the spark that would awaken the courage I hadn't realized I had. And I would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. I stormed back into the house, my hands still trembling, my stomach twisted in anger and disbelief. The driveway was empty, yes, but inside, the tension was suffocating. I knew I had to confront them, to hear the words directly from their mouths. I couldn't stand another vague text, another dismissive shrug. I wanted truth, no matter how ugly it might be. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, now. My voice echoed through the kitchen, sharp enough to startle even the cat, who shot off the counter in alarm. My parents looked up from their breakfast, casual as ever. Dad sipped his coffee, unconcerned. Mom stirred her tea, her expression neutral but careful, like she had been expecting this confrontation sooner or later. Dad set his mug down slowly, his eyes avoiding mine for a moment. "Evelyn, calm down," he said, in that familiar tone I had always hated. Calm, as if nothing serious had happened. "Calm down." I repeated, my voice rising. "Calm down. My car is gone. Did you seriously think this was okay? You just handed my keys to her." Mom's fingers trembled slightly around her mug. "Evelyn, we didn't mean anything by it. She just needed it for a short drive." A short drive? I couldn't help the bitterness in my voice. A short drive? That's my car you're talking about. I bought it. I worked for it. I saved for months and stayed late at work, so I could finally have something that was mine. Dad finally looked at me, and I could see the flicker of guilt, or maybe just discomfort. We thought it was fine. She promised she'd bring it back today. I felt a wave of nausea, the anger threatening to drown everything else. Fine, fine. Do you know what fine feels like to me? Fine feels like betrayal. Fine feels like every effort I put in was invisible. Fine feels like my parents just handed over my accomplishment, like it was nothing. Mom shifted in her chair. "Evelyn, please. It wasn't meant to hurt you. She what?" I cut in, my voice sharp, almost a scream. "She didn't ask me. She didn't even hint she wanted it. And you both decided it was okay to just give it to her behind my back." Dad leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Look, we didn't think you'd mind. We thought it would be helpful. Helpful. Helpful." I wanted to laugh, but it came out as a bitter sob. Helpful? How was this helpful to me? How could giving my car to my sister without consent ever be helpful? Every word they spoke felt like another layer of betrayal, cementing the idea that they didn't really see me, not my effort, not my autonomy, not my voice. I paced the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. You don't get it. It's not about the car. It's about respect. It's about acknowledgement. I've been responsible my whole life. And now it feels like I'm invisible in my own family. Mom's eyes softened for a moment, but it didn't reach her words. Evelyn, don't make this bigger than it is. It's just a car. She's your sister. She needed it. You'll get it back soon, and everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. The phrase made my blood boil. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, my vision narrowing. Fine? You think everything will just be fine? That's what you always say when you make decisions that affect me and never even think to ask. No, this isn't fine. Not for me, not for anyone who has worked hard for something that belongs to them. Dad finally spoke, his voice lower now, more serious. Evelyn, we understand you're upset. We didn't want to fight. We thought we were helping her out. Helping her out. I froze. Every memory, every tiny moment from my childhood flashed in my mind, the times I had sacrificed so much for the sake of peace, the times I had quietly done what was expected so the family wouldn't fight. And now, after all those years, my sacrifices didn't matter. The car wasn't just a car. It was my independence, my hard-earned victory. And they had handed it over like it was a family toy. I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted, but the fire in me didn't die. Do you even realize what this feels like? That my parents, the people who were supposed to protect me, just decided I didn't matter enough to be asked. Mom reached out, her voice trembling slightly. Evelyn, please, it wasn't meant to hurt you. You have to understand. I pulled my hands away sharply. Understand? I've been trying to understand my whole life. I've tried to be the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who doesn't complain. And every time, it's like you take it for granted. And now my car, something I worked for, is gone. And all you can say is, we didn't mean to hurt you. Dad sighed, shaking his head. Evelyn, we didn't think about it that way. We thought. You thought what? I snapped. That my effort and my hard work are just less important than whatever she wants. That's what you thought. Silence filled the room. Mom's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Dad looked at me with a mix of frustration and regret. For a moment, the weight of the confrontation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could feel my heart pounding, every beat echoing in my ears. Then I heard the sound of a door opening upstairs. My sister. She had overheard everything. Her footsteps were tentative as she came down the stairs, eyes wide and guilty. Evelyn, she whispered. I didn't turn immediately. I wanted her to feel the gravity of what had happened, to understand the betrayal in every word I had spoken. Finally, I looked at her. Do you even realize what you've done? She shook her head slowly. I just wanted to borrow it. I didn't think. You didn't think. I repeated, my voice trembling with rage and sorrow. You didn't think. That's exactly the problem. You don't think about anyone but yourself. And my parents, my own parents, thought it was okay to let you take something that wasn't yours. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I didn't mean to. I just wanted. Wanted what? I asked, my voice cracking. To feel special? To have something you didn't earn? To make my hard work meaningless? The room fell into an awkward, tense silence. My parents exchanged glances, no longer speaking. The air felt thick, heavy with tension and unspoken truths. For the first time, I realized that this confrontation was bigger than a car. It was a window into years of unspoken favoritism, miscommunication, and emotional neglect. I sat back, running my hands through my hair, trying to steady my emotions. This isn't just about a car. I finally said, my voice quieter but firm. It's about respect. It's about understanding that my effort, my work, and my feelings matter. And right now, none of that seems to matter to any of you. Mom reached over tentatively, but I pulled back again. Don't touch me. Not yet. I need you to actually hear me, not try to smooth it over with excuses. Dad finally spoke, his tone more serious, more honest. Evelyn, you're right. We didn't think about how this would make you feel. We were trying to avoid conflict, but we failed. We didn't respect your feelings, and for that, I'm sorry. Mom nodded, tears streaming now. I'm sorry too. I wanted to help her, and I didn't think about the consequences. I see now how wrong that was. I took a deep breath, feeling some of the tension ease, but not all of it. Apologies were words, but actions mattered. I appreciate that. I said slowly, but apologies aren't enough. This has to stop. I can't keep being ignored or overlooked. My boundaries have to be respected. My voice has to matter. Dad nodded, a small, reluctant smile forming. You're right, Evelyn. We hear you, and we'll do better. We need to do better. I looked at my sister. She still looked guilty, ashamed, but I also saw fear. Fear of the consequences, fear of losing the fragile trust that remained. You need to understand something too, I said firmly. This isn't just a lesson for you. It's a lesson for all of us. We can't keep making decisions that hurt each other and pretend it's okay. She nodded silently, her eyes lowered. The weight of the room shifted. The confrontation had been painful, raw, and emotional, but it was also a turning point. I could feel the possibility of change, the potential for real understanding, even if it would take time. The house was quiet after our confrontation. My sister had retreated to her room, and my parents hovered in the kitchen, talking in hushed tones that didn't concern me anymore. I wanted answers, real answers, not the vague apologies or excuses we'd just gone through. And deep down, I had a gnawing suspicion that my sister wasn't telling the whole truth. That feeling wouldn't leave me, no matter how much I tried to shake it off. I decided to start where I always began when I needed clarity: investigation. Not the spy thriller kind, but careful observation, subtle probing, piecing together breadcrumbs she might have left behind. First, I checked her social media, careful not to alert her that I was watching. Her posts were innocuous at first glance. Selfies, a new hair color, a few boomerangs with friends. Nothing about a car, nothing that hinted she had taken mine, or had she. I noticed, though, a story she posted the previous night. A blurry photograph of a street corner with what looked like a red sedan in the background. She had cropped out any recognizable license plate or street sign, but the color made my heart tighten. That was my car. I stared at the image for a long moment, feeling a surge of anger mixed with confusion. Why had she taken it? Where had she gone? Who had she met? I grabbed my phone and dialed her, but she ignored the call. I left a voice message, trying to keep my tone calm despite the tremor in my voice. Evelyn, please, call me back. I just need to know where the car is. I hoped my words would pierce through her silence, but they didn't. By mid-morning, curiosity and anxiety gnawed at me so much that I decided to take a walk. Maybe seeing the neighborhood from a different perspective would help. I walked down the street, looking for any clue, a tire mark, a note, anything that might indicate where she had gone. Halfway to the corner, I spotted a scrap of paper fluttering in the wind. It had been torn from a notebook, jagged edges, and all. I picked it up carefully. It was a message. Meet me tonight by the old park. Bring it. My stomach dropped. The handwriting looked familiar. It was hers, but the message had an urgency I hadn't expected. I folded it carefully and shoved it into my pocket. This wasn't just borrowing a car for fun. There was something else going on. Something she hadn't told anyone. including my parents. Returning home, I confronted my parents again, hoping for some clarity. Did you know she had plans? I asked, keeping my voice steady but firm. Dad hesitated, glancing at Mom. Plans? What kind of plans? I don't know yet, I admitted, but I found a note. She's meeting someone tonight, and she has the car. Mom's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. That silence spoke volumes. My suspicion intensified. They had been shielding her, but why? And from what? I went upstairs to my sister's room, heart pounding. She was sitting on her bed, earbuds in, scrolling through her phone. I knocked softly at first. Sierra, I called, using her name to get her attention without yelling. She didn't respond. I knocked again, louder this time. Sierra. Finally, she looked up, her expression a mix of guilt and fear. What do you want, Evelyn? She snapped, pulling out her earbuds. I want the truth, I said firmly. Where did you take my car last night? Who were you meeting? And why did you keep it a secret from everyone? Her eyes darted toward the window, then back at me. I can't tell you, she whispered. Why not? My patience was thinning, replaced with a mix of concern and frustration. You're in trouble. You're hiding something, and I'm not leaving until I know what it is. She bit her lip, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. It's complicated, she admitted finally, her voice barely audible. Complicated how? I pressed, taking a cautious step closer. Her hands shook as she reached for her desk, pulling out a small envelope and sliding it across the floor toward me. I picked it up slowly, my pulse racing. Inside were photographs, blurry but recognizable, showing her handing off something small to a man I didn't recognize. There were notes scribbled on the back of each photo detailing times and locations. My stomach sank. She had been meeting someone in secret, using my car. I looked up at her, incredulous. This is why you took my car. You've been running around, meeting someone behind our backs? For what? I didn't have a choice, she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I made a mistake, Evelyn. I needed money. I didn't want to tell anyone, and I didn't know where else to turn. I didn't mean to hurt you. Her confession hit me like a physical blow. Anger, disbelief, and a strange mix of fear washed over me. Money? I asked, my voice shaky. You took my car for money? Do you realize what you've done? This isn't just borrowing. It's deceit. It's lying to Mom and Dad. It's stealing. And it's putting yourself at risk. Sierra's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the bed. I know. I didn't think it through. I just needed help, and I was scared. I could see her fear, her desperation, and for a moment, the fury inside me softened, replaced by concern. She was younger, naive, and clearly overwhelmed. But the betrayal didn't vanish. My hard work, my trust, my sense of security, they had all been compromised. I decided I needed proof. So I gently asked, can you show me the notes? All of them? Every location, every time, every meeting. She hesitated, biting her lip, but finally handed over a small stack of crumpled papers. The handwriting was messy, anxious, almost frantic. Each line revealed another secret meeting, another exchange, another risk she had taken without telling anyone. The car had been a tool, a means to an end, but one that endangered more than just my trust. It could have been stolen, damaged, or worse. I took a deep breath, feeling my emotions churn. Sierra, do you realize how reckless this is? You could have been hurt. You could have gotten arrested, and you put everyone in danger by not being honest. She nodded silently, tears streaming freely now. I know. I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't want anyone to be mad at me. I thought if I kept it secret, everything would work out. But it didn't work out, I said softly, the the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. You're lucky it didn't end worse. And now we have to fix this. All of it, before it spirals even further. Sierra nodded again, wiping her eyes. I'll do anything, Evelyn. I'll tell Mom and Dad everything. Return the car, whatever you need. I didn't want to be in trouble. Her honesty finally was a small relief. But the situation wasn't over. I could see the layers of secrecy, desperation, and recklessness were far deeper than I had imagined. My mind raced. How had she gotten involved with this person? How had my parents enabled it by giving her the car without asking me? And most importantly, how could we make sure it never happened again? I decided I needed to take control. Listen, I said firmly, sitting down beside her on the bed. We're going to handle this together. But you have to tell me everything. Every meeting, every exchange, every lie. Nothing is off limits. If we fix this, it has to be complete. No half-truths, no secrets. Sierra nodded again, her shoulders slumping in relief and exhaustion. She began recounting the events in painstaking detail, the reason she had needed money, the people she had met, the exchanges that had taken place in different neighborhoods, and parking lots. Each detail made my heart pound, a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief washing over me. By mid-afternoon, I had a clearer picture of the secret she had been hiding. It was complicated, dangerous, and could have gotten her into serious trouble. But it also explained the chain of decisions, the car, the secrecy, the lies that had led to this moment. I could see the full scope of her recklessness now, and I realized how careful we would have to be moving forward. As I listened, I felt a strange combination of empathy and fury. Empathy for her fear, her desperation, her youth. Fury for the deception, the betrayal, the risk she had put herself and everyone else in. I didn't want to lose my temper, but I also couldn't let her off the hook. Finally, after hours of conversation, we came to a fragile understanding. She would confess everything to our parents, return the car immediately, and face whatever consequences came her way. I would be there to guide her, to ensure she didn't make things worse. But I also made it clear, this was the last time she would use my trust or my possessions recklessly. Even as we sat together, exhausted and emotionally raw, I felt the first glimmer of relief. The secret was out. The deception was revealed. And while the road ahead was uncertain, at least now we were facing it together. Honestly, directly, and with the gravity it deserved. By the time my sister finally agreed to confess everything to our parents, I felt a mix of relief and unease. Relief because the secret was out. Unease because nothing would truly feel resolved until there were tangible consequences. My car had been used for deceit, my trust had been broken, and my family had all been complicit in some way or another. I realized then that I couldn't just wait for apologies or promises. I needed to take control, not recklessly, but deliberately. This was about reclaiming what was mine and making sure my boundaries were respected from now on. I was forming a plan, a kind of revenge that wasn't cruel but precise, just, and absolutely necessary. I sat at my desk, notebook open, pen poised. Every thought, every strategy, I wrote down meticulously. Step 1, gather evidence. I needed undeniable proof of what had happened. Sierra had already given me the notes of her meetings and the photographs. I scanned them carefully, creating a timeline of each secret encounter, each lie, each risk she had taken. Every photograph was cataloged, every handwritten note cross-referenced with timestamps. The weight of these revelations made my heart pound. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about control, accountability, and respect. Step 2, confront my parents with facts, not assumptions. I couldn't rely on vague admissions or fleeting apologies. I needed hard evidence that showed not just my sister's deception, but also how they had facilitated it by giving her my car without asking me. I organized the notes, photographs, and even social media posts that hinted at her movements. Every small detail mattered. The way she had posted that blurred photo the night before, the crumpled scrap of paper with the time and place, each piece strengthened my case. I felt a strange sense of power building inside me. Next, I rehearsed conversations. I had to remain calm, measured. Anger alone would not achieve the resolution I wanted. I imagined dialogue in my head, anticipating every excuse, every defensive response. I could already hear Mom saying, "We didn't know what she was planning." I would counter with, "But you gave her the car without asking me. You enabled it." I envisioned Dad saying, "We were just trying to help her." I would calmly respond, "Help by putting her and my car at risk." I also thought about my sister. Part of me wanted to punish her, to make her feel the betrayal she had caused. But another part of me knew that the real lesson here was for everyone, not just for her. The plan had to target the system, not just the individual. It was about creating accountability, clarity, and boundaries. If I executed it right, it would leave everyone thinking twice before violating my trust again. That evening, I asked Sierra to bring my car back under my supervision. She hesitated, tears welling up, but I was firm. "Tonight, we do this together," I said, "but on my terms." Every detail accounted for. No lies. We left the house quietly, the streets of our neighborhood dimly lit by the soft glow of street lamps. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of autumn leaves, and I felt a strange mix of determination and tension in every step. Once the car was parked safely in the driveway, I began a careful inspection. Every scratch, every dent, every smudge on the seat's dashboard, and tires, I recorded it meticulously. I took photos, noting even the smallest imperfections. This wasn't just for proof, it was a statement. My property, my rules, my terms. I made sure Sierra witnessed every step, silently understanding that accountability wasn't negotiable. The next stage of the plan involved conversation, an orchestrated confrontation with my parents. I needed them to feel the impact of their decisions without turning the discussion into a fight. I chose a neutral space, the living room, late at night, where the house was quiet and each word would be heard clearly. I arranged the evidence on the coffee table. Photographs, handwritten notes, screenshots from social media, and a detailed timeline of events. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk about what happened with my car. And I want you to understand the full picture." I watched their faces carefully, noting the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. I began laying out the evidence, step by step, detailing every secret meeting, every lie, and the exact moments when their actions enabled it. I watched as their expressions shifted from casual dismissal to shock, then to unease. The weight of accountability finally began to register. Mom's voice trembled as she said, I didn't realize it had gone this far." I leaned in slightly, making eye contact. "You didn't realize because you weren't paying attention. You thought giving her the car would be harmless, but it wasn't. And now we're all at risk, not just the car, but trust, respect, and the foundation of this family. That's what this is about." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We were trying to help Evelyn. That's all." I shook my head, my expression serious. "Help. Enabling lies isn't help. Ignoring boundaries isn't help. And assuming my consent without asking, that's not help, it's disrespect." The room was silent for a long moment. I could feel the tension, the realization settling in. My plan wasn't about shouting or anger, it was about clarity, about showing them that consequences existed even within a family. I wanted them to understand the full impact of their choices, without me resorting to shouting or threats. After the initial shock passed, I turned my attention to Sierra. "And you," I said softly but firmly, "need to understand the gravity of what you did. This isn't just a lesson, it's a turning point. You have to take responsibility fully and understand how your decisions affect others." Sierra nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand, Evelyn. I really do. I was scared, and I didn't think." "You didn't think," I echoed, letting the words hang in the air. "And that's exactly why this has to be fixed now, properly." I could see her shoulders slump, the weight of accountability settling on her. My revenge plan wasn't about cruelty. It was about creating respect, understanding, and boundaries. I then took the next step, creating a system of checks. Every interaction, every meeting, every use of shared resources would be documented moving forward. Not because I wanted to micromanage, but because actions without accountability were the root of this chaos. I showed my parents the logs I had prepared, the photographs, the notes, the timeline. Each piece of evidence was undeniable. No more excuses, no more dismissals. This was reality, unfiltered and inescapable. Sierra, observing all of this, finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Evelyn, I get it now. I really do. I'm sorry for betraying your trust." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Good. Apologies matter, but actions matter more. From now on, you act responsibly, or there are consequences. This isn't about punishment. It's about respect." I then turned back to my parents, whose expressions had softened, but still carried a trace of defensiveness. "And you too," I said calmly, "need to understand that family doesn't mean permission to override someone else's autonomy. I'm the one who earned that car. My effort isn't optional. Respect isn't optional. If you want to help, support me, don't assume I'll accept being sidelined." Mom looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. We understand. Truly we do." Dad exhaled, running a hand over his face. "You're right. We didn't think it through. We'll do better." I nodded, feeling a measure of satisfaction. This was the culmination of my plan, not dramatic or vengeful in a traditional sense, but deliberate, precise, and effective. The revenge wasn't destruction. It was accountability. It was creating boundaries, making my family feel the weight of their choices, and ensuring this kind of violation never happened again. The night stretched on as we talked further, each of us processing the events, the revelations, and the new rules. I could feel a subtle shift in the household dynamic. The tension was still there, but it was tempered now with clarity. We were all aware of the mistakes, the betrayals, and the paths forward. Finally, as the clock ticked past midnight, I felt a sense of control returning. The car was safe, the secrets were revealed, and the boundaries had been established. My revenge plan had worked, not through anger or retribution, but through preparation, strategy, and unwavering determination. I had reclaimed what was mine, and in doing so, I had reclaimed my voice, my autonomy, and my confidence. The morning sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, warm and ordinary, yet today it felt different, almost symbolic. After the long night of confrontations, confessions, and planning, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer just reacting. I was leading, deciding, reclaiming the authority over my own life, my possessions, and my boundaries. The car, the betrayal, the secrets, they had all been catalysts, but now I felt a steady sense of ownership returning to me. I walked down the hallway quietly, careful not to disturb my parents, who were still sipping coffee in the kitchen. The smell of toast and brewing coffee was familiar, but it was tempered by an unfamiliar tension, one that carried the weight of accountability. Dad glanced up at me and offered a small, tentative smile. Mom's eyes were a little red from last night, but she nodded silently. It was as if the entire house was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I opened the garage door and saw my car parked in its usual spot. I ran my hands along its hood, feeling the familiar smoothness of the paint and the solid weight of the steering wheel under my fingertips. Every dent and scratch I had documented last night seemed less like damage and more like a reminder, proof that I had endured, survived, and now had the authority to move forward. Sierra appeared behind me, hesitant, her eyes downcast. "Evelyn, I want to make this right," she whispered. I turned slowly, meeting her gaze. "You've started by telling the truth. That was step one. Step two is respect. You respect boundaries, you respect ownership, and you respect honesty. If you can do that, then maybe we can rebuild trust." She nodded silently. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I also knew that trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It's earned through consistent action. I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this ordeal could lead to a deeper understanding between us, not just tension and resentment. I decided to take the car for a drive, not just to reclaim it physically, but emotionally. I started the engine, feeling the vibration through my fingertips. I drove slowly through the familiar streets of my neighborhood, each turn and corner a reminder of my independence. The autumn leaves rustled along the sidewalks, and the crisp air filled the car with a sense of renewal. I realized that control wasn't about punishing anyone, it was about affirming my own agency. During the drive, I reflected on the steps that had led to this moment. I thought about the way I had allowed my trust to be broken, how I had let silence and avoidance dictate the family dynamic. I realized that reclaiming control wasn't just about material possessions. It was about asserting my voice, my boundaries, and my expectations. It was about being proactive rather than reactive. When I returned home, I found my parents in the living room, the tension from last night still lingering but less suffocating. I took a deep breath and decided to lay out a plan for the family, not as a lecture, but as a framework for healthier interactions. "Mom, Dad," I began, "we need rules clear and fair. This isn't about punishment, it's about respect. If someone wants to borrow something, they ask. If there's a problem, we talk about it. Secrets and deception aren't acceptable. We have to communicate openly and honestly." Dad nodded slowly. "You're right, Evelyn. We didn't consider your feelings enough." Mom added, "We'll do better. We understand now." I could see the sincerity, but I also knew that actions mattered more than words. I suggested weekly family check-ins, a simple 15-minute discussion where everyone could share concerns, ask for help, or clarify plans. It was small, but I knew that consistency would build trust over time. Sierra approached cautiously. "I'll follow the rules, Evelyn. I promise. I'll be honest from now on." I smiled faintly, feeling a weight lift from my chest. "Good. That's all I ask. Actions speak louder than words." Later that afternoon, I went through the documents I had compiled, the photographs, notes, timelines, and organized them into a clear file. Not for punishment, but as a record, a reminder for myself and for the family of what had happened and what needed to be avoided in the future. The act of organizing and documenting gave me a sense of closure, like I was drawing a line under the chaos of the past few days. As the evening approached, I took the car out again, this time for a longer drive beyond the neighborhood. The streets were empty, quiet, and I felt a calmness settle over me. Each turn of the wheel, each shift of gears, was a reaffirmation of control, not just over the car, but over my life and my decisions. I realized that reclaiming control wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about presence, awareness, and deliberate choice. I stopped at a small park, the autumn leaves crunching under my feet as I stepped out of the car. The air was cool, refreshing, and I let myself breathe deeply. I thought about my parents, my sister, and the relationships that had been strained. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also understood that reclaiming control meant preparing for those challenges, not avoiding them. When I returned home, the house felt different. There was a quiet respect in the air, a subtle acknowledgement of boundaries and accountability. I could see it in my parents' gestures, the careful way they spoke, and the tentative steps my sister took to rebuild trust. Control, I realized, wasn't about dominance. It was about establishing clarity, consistency, and fairness. I spent the next few days reinforcing these boundaries, making sure that everyone understood the expectations. My sister returned the car only when I was present, every trip documented, and every interaction monitored. I kept the family check-ins consistent, and slowly, the atmosphere shifted from tension to cautious cooperation. Each day, I felt my sense of agency grow stronger, my confidence more rooted in tangible action rather than emotion alone. One evening, as I sat in my room, I reflected on the journey of the past week. The betrayal, the secret meetings, the confrontations. It had all been exhausting, emotionally draining, and challenging. But it had also been transformative. I had learned that control wasn't about retaliation or anger. It was about presence, clarity, and deliberate action. I had reclaimed what was mine not through force, but through strategy, communication, and unwavering commitment to boundaries. Later, I overheard my sister in the kitchen speaking quietly with my mom. "Evelyn's right," she said softly. "I see it now. I understand how my actions affected everyone, and I don't want to do that again." Hearing those words, I felt a quiet satisfaction. My plan hadn't been about vengeance. It had been about teaching accountability, restoring trust, and reclaiming control in a way that was measured and meaningful. That night, I sat in my room, looking out the window at the quiet street below. The car was in the driveway, safe and untouched. My family was beginning to understand the importance of honesty, boundaries, and respect, and I, for the first time in a long while, felt fully in control, not just of the car, but of my life, my choices, and my emotional well-being. Reclaiming control had been a journey of strategy, confrontation, and self-awareness. It had been about turning chaos into order, betrayal into clarity, and fear into empowerment. I realized that control wasn't something to be demanded. It was something to be earned through deliberate action, consistency, and integrity. The next morning, I drove my car once more, the crisp autumn air filling the cabin. Each mile reinforced my sense of independence, responsibility, and regained authority. The road stretched ahead, open and inviting, and I felt a profound sense of freedom. Not just because I had my car back, but because I had my voice, my boundaries, and my agency firmly restored. As I returned home, the sunlight glinting off the hood of my car, I knew that this was more than a victory over a situation. It was a victory over doubt, manipulation, and complacency. Reclaiming control had transformed not just the way I handled my possessions, but the way I approached my relationships, my boundaries, and my life. As I sat on the hood of my car that evening, the sky painted in shades of amber and deep purple, I felt a quiet sense of triumph, not the loud, boastful kind, but the calm, steady victory that comes from knowing you've reclaimed what was rightfully yours. The past week had been a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, fear, and uncertainty, but now, for the first time, I could breathe without that tight knot of resentment clutching at my chest. I thought about my sister, Sierra, and how easily she had slipped into secrecy, driven by fear and desperation, and yet how profoundly human her mistakes had been. Her apology, her willingness to face the consequences, and her promise to respect boundaries gave me hope that trust could actually be rebuilt brick by brick. I realized that control wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about clarity, accountability, and the courage to stand firm in your convictions. I glanced at my parents, sitting quietly on the porch, their faces etched with a mixture of regret and understanding. The journey hadn't just been about the car. It had been about the subtle cracks in our family dynamic, the times unspoken expectations had been ignored, and the lessons that none of us had wanted to face until now. I understood that they had acted out of what they thought was kindness or support, but I also understood that intentions alone weren't enough to override responsibility. What mattered was the recognition of mistakes, the willingness to listen, and the conscious choice to change. Last night's confrontations had been painful, raw, and exhausting, but they had also created a space for growth, honesty, and mutual respect that I hadn't thought possible. The car, my hard-earned car, sat gleaming in the driveway, but it was more than just a vehicle. It symbolized independence, perseverance, and the strength to assert boundaries without losing compassion or empathy. Every dent, every scratch, every mark told a story, not of failure, but of lessons learned, lessons that would shape the way I approached my family, my relationships, and myself in the future. I realized that reclaiming control was as much about self-respect as it was about ensuring others recognized your limits. It wasn't about dominating or punishing. It was about holding space for honesty, fairness, and accountability, and demanding that space be honored. Looking back, I could see that every emotional twist, the deception, the betrayal, the secrecy, had led me here to a place of clarity and inner strength. I understood now that family doesn't always come with instinctive understanding. Sometimes it requires confrontation, courage, and deliberate action to restore harmony. I felt proud, not because I had won over anyone, but because I had stood up for myself, remained true to my values, and faced the chaos with both intelligence and empathy. For the first time in a long while, I felt fully in control, not just of my car, but of my life, my choices, and my emotional well-being. And in that quiet moment, with the wind rustling through the autumn leaves and the soft glow of twilight bathing the street, I finally allowed myself to hope that trust could be rebuilt, boundaries could be respected, and even after betrayal, family could heal.